we all experience together the fire of the future. And to me, this felt like I had seen what our kids' lives are going to be like. And not just in LA, but all around the country and all around the world. And I'm not here to say nobody's to blame. There are many things that could have been different that perhaps could have changed the outcome of the fire, but the magnitude of the fire that we experienced, what it was, what it felt like, we're not the only ones to experience this. Talk to people in Lahaina or in Paradise. Yeah. It's not a secret that more and more of this kind of stuff is happening. And so talking about it, writing about it, finding ways to sort of explore all of this stuff is so important. And that's what I hope people get out of the book too.
Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today we are joined by award-winning journalist and New York Times bestselling author Jacob Soboroff to discuss his new book, Firestorm: The Great Los Angeles Fires and America's New Age of Disasters. In this book, Jacob takes us to the front lines of the fires in Los Angeles in January 2025, offering a deeply personal firsthand account of one of the most destructive fires in the city's history. We also talk about why Jacob wanted to write this book so quickly, what he hopes readers will get out of it, and how he balanced the politics and personal in his account. Our book club pick for January is Girl on Girl: How Pop Culture Turned a Generation of Girls Against Themselves by Sophie Gilbert. We will be discussing the book on Wednesday, January 28th with Christiana Mbakwe Medina. Everything we talk about on each episode of The Stacks can be found in the link in the show notes. If you like this podcast, if you want more content, community, and conversation around books, consider joining the Stacks Pack on Patreon at patreon.com/thestacks and subscribing to my newsletter Unstacked at tracythomas.substack.com. Each of these places offer different perks like bonus episodes, community conversations, virtual book clubs, hot takes, nonfiction reading racks. And now in both places, you can also join as a free member. Plus, when you do join on a paid tier, it makes it possible for me to make this podcast every single week. So go to patreon.com/thestacks and or tracythomas.substack.com to join. All right, now it is time for my conversation with Jacob Soboroff. All right, everybody. I'm joined today by Jacob Soboroff. I'm very excited. I'm a fan.
Thank you, Tracy.
I've been a fan of yours for a long time, I got to say. One of my favorite NBC guys. So I'm thrilled that you're here. We're going to talk about your brand new book, Firestorm: The Great Los Angeles Fires and America's New Age of Disaster. We always start here in about 30 seconds or so. Can you tell folks about the book?
Well, I covered the fires in real time. And I grew up in Pacific Palisades, one of the two places that was devastated by the fires. And it was impossible for me to process in real time, to see my childhood home burn down, to see the homes of so many of my friends, to watch my city carbonize before my eyes. And so the book for me has been and is a cathartic sort of opportunity and experience to look back and to dig deeper and to learn more about what it was that I went through live on national television. And it's been, I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to do it.
Do you feel like you got out of writing the book what you were hoping for as far as that cathartic experience goes?
I don't even think I knew what I was looking for when I started writing the book. But I think in the end, what I realized I was looking for was a deep connection with other people. And that's what the book gave me. I think that it's my favorite part of my job as a reporter for MS Now, formerly MSNBC.
Sorry.
It's okay. And at the time I was working for NBC. But that's what I think I've taken away from it. I mean, I've learned a lot, and we can talk about all of it, and it's all in the book, about our planet, about our city, about our fellow human beings, about what actually happened and how I ended up in the middle of it. But more than anything, I feel like I learned about other people, and I got from other people what so often happens in these types of tragedies, which is hope. And that's what I walked away from all of this with.
I think I have a question that everyone is going to have, which is like, this book is coming out really soon.
Yeah.
Right? It comes out a day before the anniversary of the fire starting.
Yeah.
And I think everyone has questions about that. And so I'm curious why you wanted to write the book so quickly, why you wanted it to come out so quickly. Well, let's start there.
I think that I sort of knew right away, almost when I was in the fire, that what I was experiencing was something that I don't think any human could wrap their head around. And in fact,
Yeah.
my former neighbors and my brother who lost the home that he was living in with, my sister-in-law and friends and stuff, nobody was there. Everybody left, So I was there in the
Right.
middle of it, alone with the first responders, extraordinary first responders, other journalists who were there. And I really did know right away, like I wanted to start exploring whatever that meant, what this thing was. Frankly, covering fires was the last thing that I wanted to do. And I write about that in the book. Like, I don't want to put on that cosplay in the yellow jacket that we'd wear as reporters in the middle of fire so often, because I frankly didn't see the value in it at the time. And as soon as I was there and as soon as I started to experience all that, I wanted to dig in. And in terms of why I sort of put it to bed so soon, I don't see the book as sort of some deep dive piece of investigative journalism. I see it as my version of the facts on the ground as I learned them at the time, which is sort of what I always do, both on TV and in my first book, Separated, and about what I've learned since. And so there will be hopefully thousands and thousands of stories written about the fires and the personal experiences that people had. There are millions of versions of the story, actually, based on how many people live in the area and experienced it and watched it live on television, on the internet. But this is my version of the story. And it'll continue to evolve. That's what I guess a paperback is for. And what talking about it with people like you is for. But I wanted to, the first anniversary is approaching. And I think for me, it's been a crazy year. I will never forget 2025. And I sort of wanted to get it down as fast as I could.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for me as a reader going into this book, I think I thought it was going to be much more like researched.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the book is really much more of a memoir.
Yeah.
Which shifted sort of how, as I started reading it, it really shifted how I was reading it, like what I was reading. I think because you are a journalist, and I think so often, journalists come, into writing things from that sort of removed perspective. I was really fascinated by how much of you is in the book because, I was watching you on TV, on Sunset and Amalfi, on the night of the fires.
Yeah.
No, but so reading about you, how you were experiencing it in this memoir form, I think a lot of people maybe aren't going to expect that. And I think that's what makes this book sort of special and worthy of time, is because you are both the person we're looking to for answers as the journalist on TV, and then also we're reading about your own sort of chaos and insecurity and sort of emotional turmoil. Because even though you've covered things, it's not always your hometown. It's not always your community. You're probably not usually driving from site of the disaster back to your home to go to sleep.
No, definitely not.
You're out in the world. And so I think like the memoir aspects of this book are really powerful. And I wasn't expecting that.
Thanks. Yeah. It's sort of how I was always approached in my 10 years here at MS Now. When I first started MSNBC, I came in and it was never really for me about, I never even thought, I wouldn't even use the word journalist to describe myself actually when I first started here. And I was very insecure about it. And only through the experiences of being able to go places and see things with my own eyes and report back the facts on the ground, like I was saying to you, did I develop even the confidence that was what I was doing. And it was my first book, Separated, and reporting on family separation, that made me understand that, like, a couple things. One is, I don't feel comfortable pretending like I'm not in these places and having reactions and feelings that I do when I go to cover stuff, whether it was the family separation crisis or the fires or going to Ukraine and covering the war there or going to Haiti and watching Biden deport people or whatever. I'm a human being too. And I think what I've learned about myself and what I like to write about, I use the experience both to reflect internally and also to grow by meeting other people and sharing what stories I can. But yeah, you're right. There are plenty of amazing books, and I read a lot of them about fires and about climate change and about the causes and fire history. And I spoke to so many of those people, and it's not that there isn't, original reporting in the book. There's plenty of it, but I think that that's how I process reporting always, which is to not pretend like I wasn't there. That's what people expect from me now, whether they're watching on TV or they're picking up a book.
Yeah. So as an Angelino and a person, I one of the things I'm most curious about, and I can't wait for the book to come out, I'm really curious to see how people will respond to it who are not Angelinos.
Me too.
Right? Because I think like there's so much in this book that I'm like, oh, I was watching that. I remember that moment. I remember.
I know that street.
There's things that it just, like the smell, the this, the that. Like when the Sunset Fire broke out, that's sort of in my neighborhood. We evacuated. Like
I didn't even ask you. Wait, hold on. So how was your fire experience? Like, what was it like for you?
So it was, very, very stressful. I have at the time brand new. They were 5-year-olds old. They just turned 5. Wow. Twins. And the Tuesday night, so I'm going to tell you my whole story. So Tuesdays, I have a meeting with a woman who I work with named Cherie, who does like a lot of marketing stuff with me. She does the website, whatever. She lives in the Palisades. We had our Tuesday morning call and she's like, my mom will not stop messaging me about these fires. And I'm like, Mom, chill out. We get off our call. Our call's from 10 to 11 every Tuesday. We get up for 11 to 12.
So this is in the morning. This is in the morning, right as it's happening. Right as it's starting. Yeah.
Right as it's happening. Her mom is like bugging her as moms do. We get off the phone. Honestly, don't even think about it. You know the way if you live in LA or in California. I'm from Oakland originally. When I was a kid was the 1991 Oakland Hills fire. Yep. So like I'm petrified of fire, but in the ways that you get these alerts or it's like, oh, fire burning in the Palisades, to me means like in the mountains, everything's fine, no big deal.
That was my life growing up too. Same thing.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not a real thing in a lot of ways. Get off the phone, whatever, do my whole day, pick my kids up from school, go home. I see this guy. I'm like, oh, I should turn on the news. It's kind of fiery. Watch the news all night. Stay up so late. Watching people in Altadena.
Yep.
Freaking out.
Yep.
Starting to be like triggered because again, the Oakland Hills fire. Then the next day, no school for kids, right. I think. Home with my kids. And then watching, very stressed, thinking maybe we should just leave because the sky is gross, the air is gross. Like, let's just go. We're probably fine, whatever. Then the fire breaks out in the Sunset Fire. And it's right at bedtime. It's like my kids go to bed at 7. It's probably like 5 something. Maybe.
I was driving back. I remember. I read about the book. I'm driving back on the 10 towards my house, and I could see off to the left exactly probably what your experience were much closer up.
Well, we don't live that close, but we live close enough that I was like, you know what? My anxiety is so high right now. Let's just go to my sister's in Long Beach. Let's just go. So we pack everything up. And we leave, and it's so much traffic trying to get down because everyone in Hollywood is having the same thing of like, we just watched for the last 24 hours, people waiting too long, people not preparing. And I said, if we have to evacuate and my kids are already asleep, it's going to be so much worse. Mm-hmm. So let's just go now while they're still awake. We just had dinner. We'll go to Lisa's, whatever. So we drive down. My mom lives in Santa Monica.
Wow.
Her area got evacuated. She was coming to our house. I said, just meet us at Lisa's. So we all go down there. Everything was fine for us. But it was this real, it's just so stressful. You don't know.
This is what I'm saying. Everyone has one of these stories. Everybody has one of these stories. Everybody. So there are millions of people that knew what it was like to be on a text thread, living what really was the disaster movie about Los Angeles. And you asked, like, what do people outside LA? This is what people think about LA when they think about the disaster movies or whatever. And this is the one time that it really happened. People think about the big one earthquake, but this is what it was. Yeah. And so you made it to Long Beach, okay?
We made it to Long Beach. Everything was fine. But I get to Long Beach and all of a sudden I think, oh my gosh, what's up with Cherie? So I text her. I say, Cherie, like, is everything okay with you? And she goes, no, my house burned down. We lost everything.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, because in those moments, I just, Tuesday morning pre-fires felt like 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I'd completely forgotten. And, sadly, she lost everything. Another woman that I work with in Altadena, who I had worked with, she also lost her home. And, the kind of like happy ending to the story or like the update to the story is that in May, Cherie and I worked together to do a huge fire event for people who'd lost their homes, where we did a pop-up bookstore in Hollywood where people could come and they could get their books. And, it was so meaningful, not only because it was something that, I could do for the community, but also because Cherie had lost her home. And my friend Becca, who also showed up and got books, had lost her home. And, a lot of people that I know through the books, things I did, they came. And so many people said that it was like the best fire relief event they went to. And not that I'm competitive or anything, but I am. And it just was like so nice. But I have to say that the only reason it was the best one is because Cherie was helping plan it with me. And she was like, I've been to so many of these. This is what I need. This is what we need. This is what it should feel like.
This is exactly what, at the end of writing the book, meeting people, learning these stories, I got to experience some of that stuff in real time. And I saw you were out early on too, doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's what I'll always hold with me from this experience,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like the human aspects of it, I mean, people who listen to the show and who follow will remember that like for 2 months after the event, I couldn't even talk about it without crying.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't even, like Cherie and I would have our meetings and I would just be like, I'm not ready to talk about it.
We all went through a trauma together,
Yeah. Yeah. So enough about me. This is supposed to be about you.
Well,
see, you're the real journalist.
No, but this
really
reminds me. This reminds me of why I did it, and I think that ultimately, what I learned from the experts, and that this is reporting about, the science of it and what it is that we experienced and the confluence of events that created this, is we all experience together the fire of the future, in a way.
Yeah.
And to me, this felt like I went and picked up H.G. Wells' The Time Machine after the fires, because I did feel in some way, like I had seen what our kids' lives are going to be like. And not just in LA, but all around the country and all around the world. And it is the confluence of all of these things, which all are storylines in the book. Obviously climate change, the disintegration of our infrastructure, changes in the way that we live, and frankly, politics, misinformation and disinformation that made so much of this worse. And I'm not here to say nobody's to blame. There are many things that could have been different that perhaps could have changed the outcome of the fire, but the magnitude of the fire that we experienced, what it was, what it felt like, we're not the only ones to experience this. Talk to people in Lahaina or in Paradise, or in North Carolina who've experienced tornadoes or hurricanes or natural disasters or whatever the case may be. It's not a secret that more and more of this kind of stuff is happening. And so I always just feel like, as someone with a couples therapist and individual therapist, I feel like talking about it, writing about it, finding ways to sort of explore all of this stuff is so important. And that's what I hope people get out of the book too.
I want to come back to the politics of it, but I want to stick right now for sort of like this new age of disaster, these like new fires. What is it to you? I mean, I know you write about it in the book, the moment with like the X, that was really powerful little bit, but what is it to you that makes these fires feel different, or like these disasters? What is it that defines the new age?
Well, I think it'd be really easy to say, oh, well, Donald Trump became the president and was the president-elect during this and was with Elon Musk and Katie Miller, Stephen Miller's wife, who comes up in the book, and there's some reporting about that. We're spreading, misinformation and disinformation about the fires, and that didn't make anything any easier. But the reality is that there has been some version of that story before Donald Trump. And I think that the scale and the scope of the disasters in my time as a journalist have all been, as big as this, or approaching sort of the magnitude of this. This was the costliest wildfire event in American history. But when you look at that $1 billion disaster registry, there have only been more and more of these. So what is the new age of disaster? It's an age that sort of, I think, in our lifetimes we've been living through. That climate change, which I don't think any of us are disputing, was a factor here.
Not any of us.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm sure my emails will be lighting up momentarily. But all of these things about the way in which we live, as I was saying, our infrastructure is worse. When I say the changes in the way we live, thousands of electric car batteries were exploding. I heard them in real time as I was out there. Literally the fuels for the fire are different today. And so it's in real time how the fire promulgates and explodes but also the aftermath of the fire too, that I think collectively, and our reactions to it as citizens, politicians, the first responders, et cetera, make it uniquely in this sort of moment in time. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not a wildlife biologist. I talk to all of these types of people, meteorologists, federal government employees, but I learn from them and listen to them about what these things are like for them. And they're as bad as they have ever been for all of them.
Yeah. I think something that is really present in the book, which is sort of the like disinformation, the politics of the moment, but also even if you sort of remove the politics for a moment, it's just the real time information feels really different to me from previous, not specifically this, but just in general, the way that like I can know about a disaster 5 minutes after it's happened from around the world, and that we're getting constant updates. And, and I think people know this and remember this from other previous things of like the early news isn't always the true news.
Right.
Like, police officers lie, or like someone heard something and it's not confirmed and all of that. But with social media where everyone is reporting and the videos and all of this, I feel like it enhances a type of like personal anxiety around a disaster that is really compounds with the feelings of danger.
That's what I wanted to capture, and I hope I did in the book, sort of the immediacy of the feeling of being there that all of us in some way experienced. And I happen to be in it in the Palisades.
You were there.
But in Altadena, people experienced it, and everybody in all corners of the city was having family text threads light up. Some people had apps that were telling them where the fire was and how it was approaching. Yeah. Other people didn't get alerts from the city or the county or from other governmental organizations that should have been alerting them, and resulted, I think it's fair to say, in the deaths of some people who didn't get those types of alerts. And so, yeah, that's why I wrote the book kind of so, I tried to reflect what it was like for me to be so present and so in the moment, because that too is what the new age of disaster feels like. It's like we are living these things not just in real time, but almost second by second, minute by minute. And so the book starts with me sitting in the bureau in LA at the NBC offices and walking to the bureau chief's office and saying, I'm sitting here watching it on television at my desk, saying, I grew up I know that street in that neighborhood. I'm able to watch it in real time as this is unfolding. I need to go. And she said, okay, we don't have a crew ready to go, but if you want to get geared up or head out or whatever. And from there, it's like I closed my eyes and I can remember every hallmark, and I think so many people can too. But if you weren't here and you were just watching on TV or just following online or just read some newspaper article, you don't get it. And that's, I think, that too is what's in the pages of the book. It's the intersection of all and that's why I wanted to meet all these people who in real time I didn't really get to spend a ton of time with, but go back, especially with people in Altadena, to learn what it was like for them to have a similar experience with a different cause of the fire. Palisades was now we know, was this arson allegedly that was set with this Lockman fire that became the Palisades fire 7 days later. And in Altadena, it was the old and faulty equipment that caused the fire. Yeah. And everybody experienced it in a different way, but everybody did share, which is, I think, such an important point you make, this profound sort of immediacy of it. That's how I will always remember it. And I hope people will remember it that way too when they read the book.
This is maybe an indelicate question, but I think it's important, which is, how are you feeling about people who've lost their homes in the fires reading this book? I know I've seen it online a little bit, and I'm sure you have too, that people are like, it's too soon. Yep. He didn't lose his home. Yeah. Who is he to say this? So how are you thinking about that? I don't know. Can you talk about that?
Of course. I think that everyone's going to experience this differently. And am I in a position of privilege where I get to, it's my profession to report on things? I mean, you could look at it both ways. It's a privilege and it's my profession, and I'm in this position that so many other people don't get to have and do, to reflect on these types of things for a living. But the amount of pain and grief that I went through is not of someone who has lost a family member or lost my own home in real time, but my family members did. I watched literally the hallmarks of my entire formative years and childhood. This is not defense of it. This is just my reality of why I wanted to do it. Burn up in front of my eyeballs. And I think that this has been honestly a hard year for me. And after this were the ice raids in LA, and it really tore apart our city. And I spent months, covering that. And I think for me, my answer is you don't have to want to read my account of this, but maybe we can find some shared sort of community in it, if that is helpful to people that went through this, or for people on the outside, certainly, where we can find a way to learn from each other. And that's what I wanted to do. And I hope in some way, I've heard from people who experienced fires all over the country or other disasters who said, I'm looking forward to reading this to sort of see how you all in California, and you, Jacob, as a journalist, but also as an Angelino, the book is dedicated to my fellow Angelinos, are processing all of this. And I think it's sort of a, hopefully the book will even be like an evolving document, and we'll have more to say and more things to share. But the thing I'm actually really looking forward to most is taking the book to people that I met along the way and giving them, their own copies, because they too, in a way, I hope I'm doing what all the people that I've met, whether it was Herb and Lloyda Wilson on McNally Avenue, or Kate Hennigan, the JPL engineer, or the firefighters in Altadena and the Palisades, they opened up to me, and I so appreciate it and will never forget it. And I that's what I want. I hope that people will see about this book, is that that's what I'm trying to do with everybody else. Get to know me a little better. Get to know not only what I experienced, but what I learned about what other people experienced, and how the big forces in our lives that shape our lives every day played a part in this too.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, we are back. I teased this earlier. I want to talk about the politics of this.
Yep.
So for people who don't know LA city politics, they were not part of the Caruso-Bass election. They are not privy to Gavin Newsom in a way that many Californians are. Politics is baked into the fabric of these fires, into the fabric of this book, into the fabric of this city. You cannot avoid politics. My question was for you, how did you know how much you wanted to put in? Because there are definitely pieces of sort of the political conversation that are not in this book or are briefly mentioned. So I'm curious.
It's a great question. A couple things. One is, I think it's unavoidable to say, and I make it clear in the book, I grew up in civic life in LA.
Yes.
From the time I was a little kid, my dad worked for many mayors and was a part of LA city politics. And, for a time, he was appointed the chief recovery officer of the city by Mayor Bass, and it was sort of messy, and there was politics involved in all of that. As a journalist, I don't think it's appropriate for me to cover that part of the story. I acknowledge it, and it's there, but I'll leave it to other people to cover that. I also didn't want to get too granular on the city county politics of the story, because I do think everybody has their own self-interest in coming to the table as politicians and pointing fingers about what happened. For me, it's like if I can report on the facts as I knew them at the time I put the book to bed about what caused the fire, what potentially could have made it worse or could have made it better. That's my role as an observer of the facts on the ground. I think more on the state level, I got to spend a lot. And by the way, it's no secret, Karen Bass wasn't here. The mayor of LA wasn't here. Yeah. She was absent. She was in Ghana on a trip, representing the Biden administration. She missed the beginning of the fire. She's gotten a lot of flack for it. None of that is hidden from the book. That's all in the story. But I didn't want to get into who's going to be the next mayor of LA. That's not what this book is about. This book is about people, not about politics. Ultimately, politics comes into it. Donald Trump made it unavoidable because even though he wasn't even the president, he and Elon and all these people are on Truth Social all day long talking about the water flowing down from the Pacific Northwest, all these things that just make absolutely no sense. And it was very interesting for me to spend time with Gavin Newsom, the governor, who, you want to point a finger at him, feel free. But it was interesting for me to understand what the dynamic was between him and the president-elect, what it was like for him to hear those things, knowing what he knew and having the relationship that they had in the first term around some of these very same issues, and exploiting, frankly, tragedy for political gain. So that's why there's some of it in there, but the book is not entirely about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, speaking of exploiting tragedy for political gain, one of the things I was truly like, what is going on here about was all of the posturing between these men. Yep. And like, are you going to come here? Are you going to come to my house? Who's going to come down these stairs? And I just thought, like, what is this about? Does this happen with every disaster, that it's all of this like, oh, now I need to go? It's like, you actually don't need to go right now. Like, you could just stay home for a few more days while the firefighters do their fucking job, and then you can come.
Amen.
Like, it was so weird.
How crazy is the story? It is a little spoiler, but like, towards the end of the book, I tell the story about how Donald Trump and Gavin Newsom have this weird interaction on the tarmac at LAX when Trump shows up, and Trump's basically like, "You're going to come on Marine One with me to go to the Palisades?" And Newsom's like, "Nobody invited me to go." But there's this back and forth about whether or not that he should. They might kidnap me. He thought to himself, "Yes, exactly." It's absurd. And I think that too is part of this new age of disaster, is that all of this in some measure becomes a show for television, or social media, for particular people's political benefit. And I felt like I couldn't write this book without telling that part of the story. There was the first trip that Donald Trump took when he became president again. He went to North Carolina, and then he came here on the same day and had this absolutely bizarre exchange in the Palisades at the fire station. By the way, didn't go to Altadena, didn't land there, didn't fly over it, didn't take a look at it. Why? There's political considerations behind all of it. And then after that was Doge and the firing of all these federal workers and the decimation of all of these agencies. NOAA. I talk about NASA and firefighters being the scientists being the firefighters of the future, and the Earth Sciences program potentially, being on the chopping block. The firefighter safety programs at NIOSH in West Virginia, where I went. I mean, that was a real privilege to get to spend time with a lot of those people in writing and researching this book. To understand the Forest Service, I went to the Pacific Northwest and was hanging out with firefighters in the Forest Service when they were all in a hiring freeze at the beginning of the administration. They come and put on a show in real time, but then the policy decisions reflect a profound misunderstanding of what it actually takes to put a fire like this out, the fire of the future. And I thought it was really important to include that.
Yeah. I think maybe people are familiar with this a little bit who aren't from LA, but on a more intimate LA level, this conversation about the water and the water pressure, and was there water or wasn't there water, and all of this. In the book, it's talked about, so we don't have to spend too much time on it. But I guess my question for you is like, what do you make of the ways in which Karen Bass was blamed for this, for being here, for not being here? Like, my understanding from people who are on the grounds in both communities is that there's been some sort of like a lot of political shifting in these communities, and so I'm kind of curious what you make of that from the stuff you've been doing on the ground, talking to people, what you've noticed about the political climate since the fire and now.
Well, don't take it from me. I think the best way to understand. By the way, if it was just at the reservoir, at the Santa Ynez Reservoir, which is 117 million gallons, and the Palisades was empty for repair issues, then why did Altadena burn also? They didn't have the same issue in Altadena. This was a mountain wave wind event that the National Weather Service predicted. You can read the entire predictive alert in the book, the entire thing. I went to visit those guys in Oxnard, Dr. Ariel Cohen and Dave Gomberg, the two meteorologists that literally laid this out for everybody, saying this was coming. If there's a spark anywhere, something like this is going to happen. Are there legitimate questions about should there have been more firefighters pre-positioned in the Palisades? Did the mop-up of the Lockman fire by the Los Angeles Fire Department not go on as long as it should, or were people sent home early? All of that is going to be the subject of investigative reporting, I think, for years and years and years to come. But could Karen Bass have personally stopped the explosion of the fire in the Palisades to result in no deaths, no devastation? That's not what the firefighters say. That's not what the firefighter who was talking to Elon Musk during his live stream down in Zuma Beach in Malibu said to him when Elon was pressing in the live stream about the water pressure and why there was no water. He said we were just flowing, I'm paraphrasing, but we were just flowing so much water at one time, it wasn't possible to have the amount of water that we needed to put it out. Right. And that was the same situation, low to no pressure in Altadena, because of the amount of water that was needed to flow to stop what's an urban conflagration. An absolutely disastrous situation where in this wildland-urban interface, coming down from the Angeles National Forest or coming from the Santa Monica Mountains, the minute like that, it gets into the Palisades or it gets into Altadena, there's no stopping it when there were winds like there were. And I'm not, people want to nitpick about were they unprecedented winds? Have we ever had winds as strong as that? Just look at the wind speeds and what was happening on the ground, or what you felt like, or what it looked like outside your window. I will never forget, and it's in the book, my 9-year-old son at the time saying to me, we'd had his birthday party in Altadena like 3 weeks before. Dad, look out the window. Look how windy it is on that Tuesday morning as I walked out the door to go to work. There was no question that it was an unusual, if not unprecedented set of weather circumstances that contributed to this that no one politician could have stopped on their own. Give me a break.
Right. For people who don't know, can you explain a little bit what the criticism of Karen Bass is? Because I feel like that's sort of not really in the book of like why, because like if you go to the Palisades now, there's like signs that are like fire Karen Bass, like there's a real vitriol against her. But for people who aren't as familiar, could you kind of like lay out what that argument is?
Karen Bass is the mayor of Los Angeles. She was a congresswoman here from the Los Angeles area for many years, and she was a community organizer and local official before that. And again, she was out of the country in Ghana on a mission for the Biden administration to attend a diplomatic event at the time. And the criticism is that despite warnings from local officials that went certainly to her staff, and some of that is in the book, she didn't come back in time and wasn't here to basically honcho the response. And I understand. I was in New York on 9/11. It was my 7th day of school at college. And I remember the way that—
We both went to NYU, by the way.
Were you there?
No, I'm younger than you. Sorry.
Gosh darn it.
I was a freshman when you were a senior, so I missed it.
Gosh darn it. But you know the feeling. And whether or not you liked Rudy Giuliani, in that moment, people looked to him because they believed we needed a leader in crisis. And I think that, was she the right person to be the leader in that moment? That's the criticism in some regard. And has the rebuilding happened fast enough? Do people feel like she understands what it's like to live in the past? And by the way, she's not responsible for Altadena. She's only responsible for the Palisades. The Palisades and Altadena are in different jurisdictions. One thing I hope people take away from this book is that it's a love letter to LA, which is hundreds and hundreds of square miles with many different localities and jurisdictions within it. LA City is just one of them. LA County is much bigger, and there's millions of more people that live in LA County. And Altadena is an unincorporated part of LA County that's not governed by the mayor of Los Angeles. People in the Palisades talk about privilege, have a lot of privilege. And I think that they are trying to exercise political power against the mayor because they're unhappy and understandably so with how awful the circumstances were. This is my community that I grew up in.
Yeah.
When you go there, it looks like there was a war. There's nothing left,
Yeah.
and people want to get back up on their feet. I understand in any circumstance, whether I'm covering an election or covering immigration at the border or abroad doing a foreign assignment, people will assign blame to anyone they can to feel better about the pain that they're going through. And she, as the mayor of the second largest city in the country, is an easy target. And I'm not saying that she doesn't deserve scrutiny. Of course she does. But was she responsible for this? And is that the reason that, if it's the reason that people in the Palisades want to vote against her when she's up for re-election, that's their political decision to make,
I got to say, when her memoir comes out, I cannot wait to read this section because she really hasn't had a lot to say. But I can only imagine what it feels
like. Being the mayor of LA is a wild job because it is a gig in which actually the city council, there's 15 city council people, and they actually have as much, if not more power than the mayor. I'm not saying that the mayor who runs and hires and fires the general managers of the departments, including the fire department and the police department, all this, doesn't have an outsized role in the public safety of the people here. But I think you're right. Anybody who's in a leadership position like this in a moment of crisis like this, it will go down in history as one of the worst natural disasters in the country, has a story to tell, and we haven't heard the story. Yeah, I didn't have the opportunity to speak with her at length about this, but I did with Gavin Newsom, and you can see it in the book. It's really extraordinary to see the vantage point from which these leaders experience this stuff. And you can see how in the middle of it, Gavin Newsom at times was literally this close. I'm holding up my fingers real tiny if you're listening, to himself igniting in flames, being out there in the middle of all of this. I think that's what people wanted to see. They want to see her out there. And at the beginning they didn't. And that sort of set the ball rolling in for the criticism, I think, that she's received.
Yeah. I am very curious to see how this all plays out. I personally, my political beliefs are not a secret. I voted for Karen Bass. I'd do it again. I'll do it again if I have another opportunity to. And I think personally, it's not my place to have a real opinion. My house didn't burn down, but I think it's a pretty unfair level of like vitriol that she's received. However, I get it. Blame in these moments, it's like we all want something to hold on to. And wouldn't it be so great if it was her fault? And we could just say, if Karen Bass had been here,
it happens with everything I cover, everywhere I go. Yeah. People look for people to blame when they are in pain. And again, that's why part of the reason I wanted to write the book is that it is a book. Politics is unavoidable and all around it. Yeah. But really, it's a book about people in pain and grieving and what it's like to grieve in real time and what it's like to grieve after the fact and what it's like to process that sometimes you can't control these things when they happen to you. Yeah. And is it the best thing to do to try to find one person and say they deserve all my scorn or they should be the recipient of all of my pain? That's not what I took away from being a journalist covering this fire. I took it as we all have a lot to learn about ourselves and about each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I do want to come off this. I think, though, I have a lot of things I want to say about Rick Caruso, but I'm not gonna. Yeah, but I'm going to come off it.
Okay, good.
Well, unless you have something you want to say about the private
No, you can tell. I don't really. I mean, I acknowledge it in the book. When I drove through the Palisades and I looked over and there was literally one shopping center standing, I didn't understand how that was possible until later I learned that this billionaire developer, Rick Caruso, who was, I think, in the book once or twice, maybe only, hired his own private firefighting force. But it does go to show, I should have said this earlier, I find when I'm in these big events that are collectively traumatizing, whether it was family separation or being in this fire or whatever the case may be, it gives you a sort of X-ray vision into the real underlying issues that we face as a society, including inequality. And this is one of them. To look to my side and see that big shopping center standing, but the skate shop across the street burnt down, or to go to Altadena and see the level of attention they were getting in a more working class, more diverse community than the mostly white, mostly affluent Palisades, it makes very clear. By the way, Mike Davis wrote about this. Octavia Butler wrote about this. These are not new things. This is not a secret. We just got to experience it actually and visualize it in real time. And it actually became very clear to me very quickly that that's what I was seeing.
Yeah. Okay. I want to shift totally up to you being a journalist.
Okay.
People who listen to the show will know that my dream job is to be a journalist. So I want to be like I want to be like Carl Bernstein back in the 70s. Like I want to expose something. That's like that's like my dream. Not going to happen, but that's my dream. And I have two journalisty questions, like inside baseball questions. One is kind of early in the book, you and your producer are sort of out, you're setting up, and your producer's like, are they even going to put us on air? And you're like, no, they super are. What's that about? You guys didn't think they were going to put you, like, what's the jockeying there?
There's only so much real estate. I think there's only, especially being a television journalist, there's only so much real estate. The fire, by the time I got out there, the nightly news, NBC nightly news, was already, I think, off the air. Okay. And I knew that the Today Show was happening the following morning. And MSNBC, remember, it was the funeral of Jimmy Carter. It was the anniversary of January 6th, the day before. I think people were waiting to hear from Kamala Harris, in the run-up to the inauguration. There was lots of politics happening on cable news. And so I was wondering, is there going to be interest in this? Like you said, fires happen all the time in LA, and people don't really think much of it. But I wrote a note and it's in the book, to Rashida Jones, Greg Kordick, and Rebecca Cutler, who is now the president of MS Now, and said, this is a big deal. And I'm on my way there. And almost immediately, I started hearing from the shows saying, okay, we're going to break into our coverage. We're going to put you on the air. But yeah, there's a lot of that behind the scenes where you sort of have to wave your arms to say, hey, this is what's happening out here, especially on the other side of the country where so much of television news is based out of New York and Washington, to let them know we got a really big situation on our hands. Same thing happened to me during the ICE protests. I think I texted, I think the first person I went on with that night too was Chris Hayes, both nights, just because 5 p.m. local happens to be sort of when these things get popping off on the West Coast. Yeah. And Chris, both times put me on the air, and that started, a night of coverage of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. Okay, and then here's my other question, also maybe indelicate. I don't understand the positioning. You are a correspondent, so you're like out on the street. Is your job, are you at the pinnacle of your job, or do correspondents want to be at a desk? Like, is there question. Like a hierarchy there, or
I don't think I'm a particularly good anchor.
Okay, that's like a totally different job.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love talking to people. If I can be in a position, I write in the book about my idol. My television idol is a guy, Huell Hauser, who was a public television legend in LA and probably did thousands and thousands of episodes of this, essentially it's not public access, but it's PBS local KCET show where he would walk around with a stick microphone. Look, I keep one at my desk. This is my favorite thing in all of journalism. It's like a magic wand.
It's got a microphone
that allows people. Yeah, I'm holding a microphone in my hand. That allows people to open up to you and share their story. And that's my favorite. Whether I was filling on the Today Show and being out on the plaza talking to people who would come from all over the country, or I get to talk to people on long lines on election day, or to be out at a fire and meet all these people in the aftermath. To me, that's the biggest blessing of having this job. I think I am, this is exactly where I want to be. This is the best job, I think, in the world. And we have this new marketing campaign at MS Now called We the People. It's so perfect for me and why I love doing this. I love spending time around other humans. And so, yeah, I mean, are there people who are out there that want to be on the desk? Maybe. One thing I want to say about this is local television news, I think, performed a public service in the most definitional sense of it during the fires.
Oh, my God, yes.
You could watch the local Channel 4 or 7 or 11 or 2 or 9 or whatever, and get minute-by-minute updates of street by street about what was happening all throughout the Southland, from the Palisades to Altadena and all the other fires, by the way, that were burning at the time. And I have so much admiration for my colleagues who did this on a local level, both in print media and in radio and digital, but really local television news. It was pretty extraordinary. And that's the stuff I love the most, to be out there and watch things happen and unfold in real time. One day will I sit behind a desk? Who knows? I don't know. I got kids. I can't travel forever.
If you want to sit behind the desk, let us know. We'll start a letter writing campaign for you. Okay. So you just let us know. This community's very active. Okay. I want to shift totally to your writing process quickly before we get out of here.
Okay.
How did you make time to start to write this book? And when did you start and when did you finish the actual writing part?
I could tell you exactly. April of this year, I was in Washington for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And we were going to do a town hall. We did do a town hall of fired federal workers on MSNBC in primetime at 9 p.m. And that was the weekend that I started writing. My wife was home here in LA and with our kids, and I finished in the fall. I mean, I think I really put it to bed, I don't know, a month ago. And my process was I would come in. By the way, when I did my first book too, same thing. I wake up in the middle of the night and I write myself notes about things that I dream before I write. It's weird. And I write about stories and scenes and people I met and things that I want to go back and explore. There's a whole thing about the free-flying parrots and parakeets that one night in my sleep came to me about. There was the first sign of life I had seen anywhere during the fires, and I wrote it down, and I went to Occidental, and I met with the wildlife biologist, and I learned about it. It was just the best part about this. But I would come into the office every day on the weekend and made a deal with Nicole, my wife, that I could write for 12 hours, at least one day on the weekends. And I did that for months.
What about writing, snacks and beverages, rituals, music?
Oh, where is it? I would get I still do it. There's a thing from, there's a little Creation. You ever go to Creation? There's one right here by the office. So I grab a little lunch pack. I have to. I did eat a lot of crap also. But I would stop on the way here and stack the stuff on my desk. Lots of hydration.
Just water, pure water, sparkling water.
No, not sparkling water. No sparkling water. I would do coffee in the morning. I would really not get up from the desk much at all. I would get up and I would walk around and I would stretch. And then eventually I would tap out. My brain would feel very fried sort of by the end of the day. And I would know when it was time to pack it up and go home. But I loved it. I love that feeling. I love the feeling of, I have a phone here next to the desk in the office, and I'd pick it up and I'd call people and I'd get sources on the line. The other thing I did was that I went and met a lot of these sources in person, and I would audio record on my phone and then transcribe and go back and read the transcripts. And that's what I would do on the weekends, is I would go through the transcripts and then find sort of the stories and the scenes that emerged. Also in sort of geeky journalism world, I would go look for the other stuff that other people had found. ABC, the local ABC affiliate, got all the text messages between all the fire chiefs early on. And I was so literally, I think hundreds and hundreds of pages of text messages. And I read through all of that and just tried to find the stuff that, I thought would add to the story. The interviews the interviews with the firefighters were some of my favorite things to do, to go back to the fire stations in Altadena and in the Palisades, and actually in Manhattan Beach also. I like to retrace my steps. So the people that I profile in Altadena are the people who lived on McNally Avenue, the street that I interviewed Gavin Newsom on for Meet the Press. And there was nothing there when we did the interview on the Saturday after the fire. And I said, well, who are these people that lived here up and down the street? And I went and tracked them down. Same deal for one of the firefighters I met live on television at the time. And I went back to Manhattan Beach to meet him. It was a lot of digging and a lot of, tracking people down. I love that stuff.
How did you take care of yourself during this process? Reliving this is not nothing. And you were witnessing these things in a really intimate way, and you were breathing the air and your eyes were red and all of these things. So coming back to this over and over, how were you making sure that you were okay? I
wasn't, actually, is the truth. I sort of got into the worst shape of my life that I've ever been in, mentally and physically. In November of 2024, I had trained and I ran the New York Marathon. And the fires happened in January. And I really sort of had a downhill emotional, mental slide for a while after the fires. And I was feeling really disconnected, even from my own family, is the truth. It was really hard. And eventually I sort of put together a program where I started exercising again. I told you, I go to therapy, all of that stuff. This stuff isn't a joke. There's a lot of trauma involved in all of this, and my trauma is pales in comparison to the trauma of the people who lost loved ones, like I said, or lost their own personal home, but I don't think I was really going there or acknowledging it. And when I started to, and actually when I started to write in April is when I started to turn things around.
Okay, I have 3 really quick questions. One is, what's a word you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Oh, man.
Preposterous. Or are you a good speller? No, you kind of have good speller energy.
No, definitely not. I like to say and write preposterous, but I can barely say it, and I definitely can't spell it.
Okay. For people who like Firestorm, what are some other books you might recommend to them that are in conversation with what you've done here?
In a way, not to plug my own first book, but in a way it's a sequel to Separated, because the guy who sort of gave me the intellectual framework to think about the fires, Commander Jonathan White, went from working with immigrant children to working in disaster relief and recovery. And to me, he's a real through line if you want to understand sort of the caliber of people that come to people's aid in moments like this. He's one of them. I read Fireweather during this. I read The Big Burn during this. I told you I read Octavia Butler. I read a lot of Mike Davis, Ecology of Fear in particular, and I think I opened the book with a quote from him about the Malibu fires, about how nothing could have stopped them. There are so many good books about fire and fire history and about climate change. The film that Jamie Lee Curtis just made about what happened in Paradise was based on a book. I feel like I need to make a whole list of the things that I read during all this, but it was one of the things is it made me understand that I needed to sort of have my own voice, and this book needed to be different because those books are all so distinct. But man, there's such good writing about fires out there.
There is. There really is. Okay, last one. And I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask you anyways, because I ask everybody this. If you could have one person, dead or alive, read this book, who would you want it to be?
Oh, wow. Who do you think I was going to say?
I think you were going to cheat and say, I want everyone who is impacted by the fires to read this book.
No, I want people. No, no. Only if you want to be in community with me and share our experiences do I want you to read this book. If you're not ready, don't read it. I would love 18-year-old me who was at NYU on 9/11 to read the book, because I learned so much about processing tragedy and grief and trauma. It's crazy to look back on what I went through as a freshman in college then and all of these types of experiences I've had now. And I think this book shows a version of myself that's so different from even who I was 5 years ago when I wrote my first book. I've learned so much about myself, as much as I've learned about the people and the places and the events that transpired in January of 2025.
That's a better answer than mine. So way to go. All right, everybody, as you're listening to this now, you can get Firestorm out in the world wherever you get your books. Do you narrate the audiobook?
I sure do.
I wish I could have listened. I'll listen when the book actually comes out. This has been a conversation.
I think I talked too slow.
Soboroff. I speed everybody up. Don't worry.
Okay.
It's fine. That's why that's there. It's 1.5 to 2 for me, no matter what.
2 is fine for me. Don't worry. I won't take it personally.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's how you really talk in real life.
Keep it zippy. I love talking
Jacob,
with you. Thank you for having me, Tracy.
Thank you so much. This was such a treat. And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again to Jacob for joining the show. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Maureen Cole for making this episode possible. Our book club pick for January is Girl on Girl, How Pop Culture Turned a Generation of Girls Against Themselves by Sophie Gilbert. We will be discussing the book on Wednesday, January 28th with Christiana Mbakwe Medina. If you love The Stacks, if you want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks to join the Stacks Pack and check out my newsletter at tracythomas.substack.com. Make sure you're subscribed to The Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, you can follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and now YouTube. And you can check out our website at thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Sahara Clement. Additional assistance from Cherie Marquez and theme music from Tagirajis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.